A lot of scaremongering, and I would just encourage people to just kind of take a deep breath and see what happens.
America braces for the Supreme Court decision on abortion. Voices from the pro-life movement say the other side should calm down.
We're a church and a people that are about mercy, compassion, love.
Protecting unborn children as well as their mothers. A Catholic reaction to some proposed laws that would criminalize abortion-vulnerable women.
That sometimes there is a danger of creating an us, welcoming them. Who is the us and who is them?
Great minds come together to talk about the disabled and how to fully integrate them into our church.
And we're a large family here that are all suffering together for Father Cape.
And we join a pilgrimage in America's heartland, honoring a military chaplain whose life has inspired thousands. EWTN News In Depth starts now.
When you protect human life, innocent human life, like unborn babies, overall, I think the country is just going to be better for it.
The debate continues in a nation divided on abortion. What appears to be a likely pro-life victory at the Supreme Court has both sides in suspense, waiting for an official ruling. All eyes are on the High Court for what promises to be a historic decision in the Dobbs case. A leak of the proposed ruling overturning Roe v. Wade is an answer to 50 years of pro-life efforts to save the unborn. But tensions are high and tempers are raw for some pro-abortion advocates, and for good reason. Security is tight to protect the justices themselves. Reporter Mark Irons begins our coverage.
A major decision coming this summer from the Supreme Court will have a huge impact on unborn lives in the U.S. Last month, the leaked Supreme Court draft opinion shocked the public. It read, "Roe was egregiously wrong from the start," indicating the court's conservative majority could be poised to overturn Roe v. Wade, a 1973 decision that legalized abortion nationwide. The leak sparked protest in support of and opposition to abortion around the country and outside the court.
With a decision expected soon, these barriers have been placed around the Supreme Court for added security. And around the country, states remain divided over abortion.
We will have several states protecting unborn children, several that will say abortion is allowed for any reason for all 9 months of pregnancy.
If Roe is overturned, individual states will have the power to regulate abortion. Carol Tobias, president of the National Right to Life Committee, says these 13 states have trigger laws set to take effect, meaning abortions will be banned here if Roe v. Wade is overturned. At the same time, other states have passed measures to secure abortion access.
New Jersey and Colorado specifically this year broadened their laws so that there are no protections for unborn children. So that was their way of responding to a potential overturn of Roe.
Tobias says the energy in state legislatures has increased since the Supreme Court leak. In late May, Oklahoma's Republican governor signed one of the most pro-life bills in the country, the law prohibiting all abortions with few exceptions.
As Republicans seek to control and criminalize women's reproductive health freedoms, Democrats are fighting to enshrine Roe v. Wade into law.
At the federal level, Democrats are trying to rally abortion support.
We will vote to protect a woman's right to choose, and every American is going to see which side every senator stands on.
But Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's attempt to pass the Women's Health Protection Act failed last month. Congressional Republicans have been critical of the Supreme Court leak itself.
This lawless action should be investigated and punished to the fullest extent possible.
According to reports coming out of the court, law clerks are being asked to provide phone records and sign affidavits as the search for the source of the leak continues. But most attention seems focused on the content of the leak and how the court could soon rule in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. It's a case out of Mississippi regarding the state's attempt to pass a 15-week abortion ban. If the Supreme Court upholds the state's law, Roe versus Wade will effectively be toppled. And when Dobbs was first argued before the Supreme Court back in December, pro-life advocates from Mississippi were thrilled about that possibility.
Mississippi, a state people often refer to as 50th place for so many metrics, but first place for defending life. So I think it's a perfect David to go up against the abortion Goliath.
Mark Irons, EWTN News in Depth.
Tensions are high over the expected ruling, and security for the justices has been heightened because of increased threats. In the most alarming incident to date, U.S. Marshals arrested a man on Wednesday armed with a gun and knife near Justice Brett Kavanaugh's Maryland home. He told authorities he intended to kill Kavanaugh. Congress is discussing legislation to fund additional and more comprehensive security for the justices and their families. The measure passed by unanimous consent in the Senate in May. With the arrest near Kavanaugh's home, the pressure is on for the House to act decisively to vote on the bill. In some states, there has been discussion of passing laws that would criminalize women seeking abortions. But many leading pro-life organizations are asking states not to go in the direction of punishing women. Roselle Reyes has our report.
Abortion is oppression! Pro-life organizations from different backgrounds and perspectives, Catholics, feminists, healthcare workers, and more, come together to say women shouldn't be prosecuted for abortions. More than 70 pro-life leaders, representing tens of millions of pro-life people in the country, signed an open letter to state lawmakers writing, "We state unequivocally that any measure seeking to criminalize or punish women is not pro-life, and we stand firmly opposed to such efforts." Despite the landmark decision on Roe v. Wade in 1973 legalizing abortion, the National Advocates for Pregnant Women has documented some 1,700 arrests and other legal actions against women who aborted their child in the U.S. since that time. Now, a controversial bill in the state of Louisiana could make women who obtain abortions subject to criminal prosecution or prison. The proposed bill, known as the Abolition of Abortion in Louisiana Act, would make women who terminate their pregnancies liable for murder charges. According to the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, as of 2018, 38 states had laws in which the victim of a crime can include an unborn child, generally called fetal assault, fetal homicide, or fetal protection laws. Bishop Stephen Parks, who serves on the Committee on Pro-Life Activities at the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, joins other pro-life leaders in preparing for a post-Roe world to protect both mothers and children.
When it comes to abortion, the child in the womb certainly is a victim, but also the mother, because she's going to suffer incredible emotional consequences because this is available to her.
While the Catholic Church is adamantly opposed to abortion, it also values forgiveness. There are ministries and several organizations run by Catholics that offer healing and hope to women and men who have experienced emotional and/or spiritual pain after abortion.
We're a church and people that are about mercy, compassion, love. And as much as we want to have that ability to help the woman, we want to guide her. We want to accompany her in this time period.
Amy Murphy, founder of the non-sectarian organization Rehumanize International, says post-abortive women should go through a restorative justice system.
We understand that abortion and miscarriages are both losses, and that we heal the trauma of those losses, of those deaths, of those preborn children, not through, punitive action, but through compassion.
Nurse Marie Ashby, who has volunteered at pregnancy centers for decades, agrees.
I think it is very painful and far-reaching to the lives of women. Sort of stays with them. What I want to do for that woman is not only help her see the value of the life she carries, but help her to see her own value.
As the executive director of National Association of Pro-Life Nurses, she has witnessed just how vulnerable pregnant women are as they contemplate an abortion. A concern reflected in the open letter to lawmakers, stating, "The woman who aborts her child is also Roe's victim. She is the victim of a callous industry. Women suffer devastating physical and psychological damage following abortion." Destiny Herndon de la Rosa from the New Wave Feminists says if the Supreme Court overturns Roe, the fight for pro-life should not end there. She believes pro-life organizations should then focus on advocating for policies.
The number one thing that I deal with is pregnant women coming to me who are saying, I feel like I have to have an abortion. And the main reasons are healthcare, housing, transportation, and childcare.
Bishop Parks says the Catholic community needs to bind together to build a culture of life.
I think our work is just beginning. I wouldn't want someone to think, oh, this is great. Now it's not a national law, but now it's in 50 states. So that's 50 times the work that's going to have to be done. For us to be living at this time, to be defenders, champions for life, wow, I think that will make the Almighty, make God very, very happy.
Rosal Regis, EWTN News in Depth.
To discuss where we are now as we await the ruling from the Supreme Court and proposals that could punish women for seeking abortions, we're joined by Catherine Glenn Foster, president of Americans United for Life. Catherine, it's great to have you here. Can you explain what motivated pro-life groups to step into the criminalization discussion? Abortion is homicide. Why is it wrong to punish women?
You know, for 50 years now, Americans United for Life has been tracking and researching this very issue. And for 50 years, our goal has been to eliminate abortion, but not to penalize women, because over the course of decades, over the course of hundreds of years, studying the criminal law, studying what was working in criminal law and in common law, lawmakers realized couple of things. First of all, they needed the women in order to testify against those abortionists, the people that we want to be targeting these laws towards. And second, they recognized that women are, in so many cases, the second victim of abortion, that when it comes to abortion, so often the woman is being coerced, is being abused, is abandoned, is in an incredibly tough situation. And with society telling her abortion is fine, it's not really a child yet, and facing pressure from her partner, in all too many cases, the woman is in fact a second victim. And so in order to both smooth that process in the courts and really target these laws toward the people they need to be targeted towards, and to recognize the true role of the woman in this, lawmakers by and large have recognized that the woman should not be penalized for an abortion.
You mentioned these are very tough discussions, and they are, but some might say that this is a deterrent to avoid a terrible crime, in the same way that sentencing requirements and even the death penalty stand for what a society will and won't tolerate, to make clear that there is undeniable life in the womb. How is this different?
This is different because, again, that woman is a second victim. The woman is so often in a situation where she feels she has no other choice. I'm post-abortive myself. When I was 19 years old, I made the tragic decision to have an abortion. I walked through those doors of the abortion facility because I thought I had no other choice. And nothing that happened behind those doors restored my choice or my empowerment or my sense of autonomy. They were just stripped from me over and over and over. And so I know firsthand the feelings, the fear, the panic that so many women who are considering abortion feel. And so I know that for me, a law that says that there should be no abortions, that would have been a deterrent, and that would have, it would have made me think twice if I had to search hard or something. But in terms of a punishment, we need to be on the side of the woman. We need to show that we are with the woman. We need to be encouraging her, showing her what the choices and the life-affirming options out there are, because most abortions, first trimester all the way through late term, they take place for one of three reasons. Number one, financial issues. Number two, relationship problems. And number three, because she doesn't feel ready to be a parent. All of those are areas where we can just come alongside a young woman. We can love on her. We can support her. We can show her resources. And that's the way to deter a woman from getting an abortion, is to offer her hope and love.
Catherine, this is obviously very personal for you, and I want to thank you for sharing your brave testimony with our viewers. You spoke eloquently about our country's abortion culture on Capitol Hill just a few weeks ago. You mentioned this heartbreaking story that you just shared with us. Let's take a listen.
We're approaching 65 million Americans dead from abortion. I know this firsthand. At 19, I aborted my first child. I felt emotional and psychological pressure to end my child's life. I was alone. So many voices in the culture lied to me. So many told me abortion was okay, was normal, was good even. I've lived with the regret of abortion every day of my life since.
Catherine, you mentioned the importance of wraparound services so that women don't have to make the decision that you made. How did you find healing and support after your abortion?
Well, number one, I finally did confide in my mom, and she is just, it's hard to imagine a better mom. She just wrapped me in love and really helped me in so many ways in the months and the years following that abortion. She found a pregnancy center for me to go to get healing, to go through post-abortion counseling. It was a lot of prayer. It was difficult. It really weighed on me for years afterwards, and then eventually I found my calling. I found my purpose, and that was to work every day to make sure that other women aren't in that same situation that I was in, and other children like mine aren't sacrificed because of a woman's fear or desperation, that we have a better way forward that offers hope and true choice. And it's just it creates a more humane America. And that's something that we should all want.
And you've been working to build that more humane America for a long time. What are your worries? What are the biggest setbacks for the pro-life movement right now? Is criminalization the only area of disagreement?
You know, it's one of the big ones, I would say, in terms of controversy. But, you know, I would say that virtually every pro-life group is aligned on this, because we just want to love that woman and give her resources and support. Otherwise, you know, I think we're all pretty much aligned within the movement that we want to eliminate abortions. And it's just a question of how far can we go and how fast, right? You know, we all want to protect all the lives that we can, and just protect those women, those moms who are in tough situations. So it's hard when you want to do so much more, and you're doing everything that you can, just working with the lawmakers, working with the people in a state, seeing what we can do to create that more humane America, and build that human right to life, recognize the intrinsic value that every single human being has, and then work to make sure that that's actually lived out in our law and in our policy and in our culture.
Well, it seems this is your moment right now, Catherine. Thank you so much for being with us.
Pleasure.
EWTN News In Depth has reported extensively on what's next if Roe v. Wade is overturned, as laws determining abortion guidelines will be decided by state legislatures. Our team of reporters, Mark Irons, Catherine Hadro, and Teresa Tomeo, fanned out across the country to uncover what would happen in 6 diverse states. We focused on California, Florida, Vermont, Michigan, Tennessee, and Maryland, each representing a different approach to life after Roe. As we continue, we'll bring you that information from our team again, including new developments in several of those key states. Stay with us.
I'm Mark Irons in Vermont.
Reporting from Tallahassee, Florida, Catherine Hadro.
In Michigan, reporting for EWTN News In Depth, I'm Teresa Tomeo.
We revisit our exclusive team coverage reporting, a look at life after Roe, debate in the states, when we return. We turn now to our comprehensive coverage of life after Roe, debate in the states, thanks to our EWTN News In Depth reporting team. For the first time, together, we share several stories about what's happening in state legislatures around the country, including updated developments from several of these critical states. We begin in Florida with reporter Catherine Hadro.
I wanted to make sure that Florida was in a position to be able to protect the children here in this state.
Kelly Stargell is the Florida state senator who introduced a 15-week abortion ban into the Sunshine State Senate. Designed after the Mississippi abortion law currently being debated at the U.S. Supreme Court, the Florida bill passed the GOP-controlled state Senate in March. following what was contentious debate.
To not have an exception for rape or incest really, or human trafficking, baffles many of us.
I believe that life begins at conception, and I'd rather lose my next election than ever be wrong on this issue.
It basically says that it is within the state of Florida, you will not be able to have an abortion past 15 weeks unless it's regarding the life of the mother or if you have a fatal fetal abnormality.
The bill's passage even sparked reaction from the nation's highest office. President Joe Biden called Florida's abortion bill dangerous, and Vice President Kamala Harris said it was extreme. Local media is reporting Florida Planned Parenthood branches are preparing to help with costs to fly patients to other states for abortions.
We are here today to protect life.
And on Holy Thursday, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed the pro-life bill into law. It will take effect July 1st. This 15-week cutoff will be a dramatic shift from the state's current 24-week abortion limit. Florida reported nearly 75,000 abortions in 2020 alone. In sheer numbers, Florida has the third highest amount of abortions in the nation, and the abortion rate is the fifth highest when calculated with the state's population.
It's a really unique situation that's happening in our state because we've had a Republican, a pro-life majority for some time, and we keep doing things through the years. We keep hitting up against that constitutional amendment, and that constitutional interpretation that has been a challenge.
I think a lot of it results from the prior Supreme Court precedent.
James Othmeyer is chief of staff to Governor DeSantis.
In Florida, a lot of people don't realize our state constitution has been interpreted by a prior court to provide a right of privacy protections that are broader abortion rights than what's been interpreted at the federal level.
Othmeyer points to DeSantis' recent appointment of 3 justices to the Florida Supreme Court, and how that's likely to reshape the state's pro-life politics, especially if the state's highest court takes up the new abortion limit.
I think we have a court that would love to revisit this issue and would interpret things differently.
If you had told us a couple of years ago we could shrink our window in which abortions are happening from viability down to 15 weeks, we would be thrilled with that opportunity.
Michael Sheedy is executive director of the Florida Conference of Catholic Bishops. As a top Catholic policy expert in the state, Sheedy has seen firsthand how Florida's constitutional right to privacy has been a roadblock to pro-life lobbying efforts over the years.
It felt like judicial activism, honestly, I think, and we've had to contend with that for a long time.
But the Catholic leader also understands the limits of politics in protecting life and the importance of directly serving families in need.
Matthew 25, is a call to care for the least among us. I think that we're really proud in Florida of a lot of the great work happening in parishes, among individuals, and the broader, community to assist women, particularly through crisis pregnancy centers.
Florida has long been a destination in the southeast for late-term abortions. Before this 15-week abortion ban goes into effect, pregnancy care centers are preparing to be on the front lines to care for pregnant women in need. The state of Florida currently gives $4.5 million in appropriations to 97 different pregnancy care centers throughout the state of Florida. The funds are distributed through the Florida Pregnancy Care Network, which contracts with pregnancy centers in a cost reimbursement program. Pregnancy centers which contract with the program are reimbursed for things like pregnancy tests, time spent with counseling, for childbirth and parenting classes. Rita Gagliano serves as executive director of the Florida Pregnancy Care Network. She's witnessed the devastating effects of Florida's existing law, which currently permits late-term abortion.
We have not only residents seeking abortions up to 24 weeks, but women coming from outside of the state seeking abortion. And so we've become known as a destination place for late-term abortion.
Gagliano hopes Florida lawmakers designate more money for the Florida Pregnancy Care Network, with the new 15-week abortion ban about to go into effect.
It's not going to mean it's time to rest, so we can't become complacent because we're actually going to get busier. We're going to see more women, and while there's still going to be some abortions, especially initially, more and more women are going to be seeking our care.
There's a shared theme in our interviews. The 15-week abortion bill is a step in the right direction, but more needs to be done to address the state's high abortion rate.
We can and we must do better.
We need to save lives, and I believe this legislation will save thousands of lives, but we can't stop there. We really do need to focus on the children and their parents. So the governor has record-setting budget proposals on adoption, foster care.
As the nation awaits the Dobbs Supreme Court ruling, pro-life Floridians await a likely major abortion case of their own at the state Supreme Court. Floridians may soon see that state Supreme Court case as abortion providers filed a lawsuit to block the law with the state's circuit court last week.
So my hope is that, if Roe v. Wade is overturned, we are positioned right now to be able to start enacting in our state. And my thought is that that would probably be challenged at our Florida Supreme Court as well, and maybe we can have a different day in Florida.
Reporting from Tallahassee, Florida, Catherine Hadro, EWTN News In Depth.
I'm Mark Irons in Vermont. Natural beauty abounds here in the Green Mountain State. According to a 2021 CNBC survey, Vermont is the most welcoming state and best place to live, ranked #1 among the 50 states. But look closer. Are all people here truly welcomed and even given a chance to live?
There's just no regard for the life of an unborn child at any stage of development here in this state. And it's really appalling.
For decades, Sharon Toborg, a policy analyst with Vermont Right to Life, has been tracking legislation coming out of the Vermont State Capitol building in Montpelier, just down the street from her office. Some laws have changed as the seasons come and go, but one thing has remained.
Since 1972, we've had unrestricted abortion throughout pregnancy here in Vermont.
Throughout all 9 months?
Throughout all 9 months.
To put that in perspective, Toborg says most states, including places like California and New York, have at least some regulations on the books regarding abortion. Vermont has none. It may come as no surprise that in another survey, this one by Americans United for Life, ranking the 50 states with the most protections for unborn children, Vermont comes in last place.
There's just no movement whatsoever to be more pro-life.
Pro-life State Representative Republican Vicki Strong has tried to propose some basic measures in the State House, like the need for abortion facilities to meet certain standards or a requirement for parental consent before a minor can obtain an abortion. But she hasn't had success.
All of those bills get a number and a name and they go to a committee, but the committee will never take those bills up.
Pro-lifers say Planned Parenthood, the nation's largest abortion provider, has a strong influence on state politics. The current Vermont Speaker of the House, Jill Krowinski, was a former high-ranking employee of the organization.
Vermont actually has the most Planned Parenthoods per capita in the United States.
Toborg says recent numbers show Planned Parenthood administers 90% of the state's abortions. And though Vermont is one of the least populous states, there were 1,195 abortions in 2019. There is help for women in crisis pregnancies. Vermont has 9 pro-life pregnancy resource centers compared to 10 abortion facilities. But the majority of abortions around the U.S. are now self-induced by ingesting pills, so locations for surgical abortions may not be in high demand. Citing the need to ensure the organization is sustainable, Planned Parenthood announced it will close 4 of its locations in Vermont.
Hey, hey, ho, ho, Roe v. Wade has got to go!
But there won't be any change in state law, even if the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade. Vermont has already secured unrestricted abortion.
We will pass Prop 5.
And now pro-abortion lawmakers want to go a step further by adding Proposal 5, being called the Reproductive Liberty Amendment, to the Vermont State Constitution.
And I can think of no better way to show our commitment to personal reproductive liberty and justice than a constitutional amendment.
The proposed amendment reads that an individual's right to personal reproductive autonomy is central to the liberty and dignity to determine one's own life course and shall not be denied or infringed unless justified by a compelling state interest achieved by the least restrictive means. Prop 5, also referred to as Article 22, is going on the ballot this fall, and Vermont voters will have the final say if it gets added to the state constitution.
It doesn't really say anything. It says a lot, but it doesn't say anything. There's very little specific about it.
Bishop Christopher Coyne of the Diocese of Burlington says the Prop 5 language is intentionally vague and was crafted to leave out the word abortion.
They're not going to include the word abortion because they know if they do, they open up. It's like you're opening up a veil. You're taking a veil away on what they're actually trying to do.
The Diocese of Burlington covers the entire state of Vermont, and the Catholic Church, alongside groups like Vermont Right to Life, is now trying to educate voters on what Proposal 5, Article 22 is and what it could do.
The purpose is to enshrine abortion rights in the Vermont Constitution so that Vermont's statute that guarantees abortion throughout pregnancy cannot be changed.
It turns out making unrestricted, unregulated abortion access a permanent fixture for the future of Vermont may not even be what people want. A 2020 poll from Vermonters for Good Government shows although 67% of the state considers itself pro-choice, more than 50% of the population favors some kind of abortion restrictions, such as parental consent for minors, safety regulations for abortion clinics, or the requirement to inform women about alternatives to seeking abortion. Proposal 5 does not include any of those measures, and the amendment text is being criticized as well. Besides not mentioning abortion, it doesn't mention women, only an individual's right to personal reproductive autonomy that shall not be denied or infringed unless justified by a compelling state interest. Could unethical practices and interpretations follow?
It talks about reproductive rights, so to speak. What does that mean? It can mean anything as the future unfolds. So it just opens the door, in my mind, to a Pandora's box of unlimited types of scenarios that aren't even thought of yet.
Personal reproductive autonomy.
We took a printout of the proposed amendment language out on the streets and asked Vermonters if they would support it.
I would vote against this, probably.
Why?
It's just confusing.
Most people didn't want to speak on camera, but we did hear from a few.
I am very much in favor of personal autonomy, especially for women and anyone in a reproductive situation.
If I saw this on the ballot, I would probably not vote on it because I would need some more clarification because I don't understand what it's asking me.
Maybe this unclear language is meant to sort of make it more appealing to a broader section of voters.
So now the work to educate voters on Proposal 5 ramps up here in the Green Mountain State.
Whether you're pro-choice or pro-life, there are good reasons to oppose this amendment.
It would prevent any future legislation. So people need to just know the truth.
This is just a bad law. It's not just about because it allows for abortion without restrictions, which is already there anyways. It's a bad law because it allows for so many other possibilities.
Mark Irons, EWTN News In Depth.
This is Teresa Tomeo reporting from Southeast Michigan. Pro-life leaders in the Great Lakes state facing additional legal and financial challenges in their battles to protect women and children from radical abortion measures that could take effect as soon as this fall. Since the beginning of this year, the movement has been organizing to educate citizens concerning a pro-abortion ballot drive, an effort by Planned Parenthood and Michigan Reproductive Freedom for All, trying to codify abortion into the state constitution. Now, a Michigan court led by a judge who once represented Planned Parenthood has moved to temporarily block the 1931 law that would make abortion illegal in the state in a post-Roe v. Wade world. Attorney John Bursch with Alliance Defending Freedom, representing the Michigan Catholic Conference, Right to Life of Michigan, and several local prosecutors, says pro-life leaders are taking their own legal steps, asking the appeals court to step in.
So this isn't an appeal from a trial court ruling, but instead it's the filing of an original action in the Court of Appeals to say that something in a Michigan trial court has gone so off the rails that the Court of Appeals needs to take jurisdiction away from the trial court judge and then do what the law requires.
Bursch also says additional ethical issues regarding the judge's close ties to Planned Parenthood should help their case.
You have a trial court judge, Judge Gleischer, who used to represent Planned Parenthood on behalf of the ACLU and litigated the key Michigan Court of Appeals case that she wrote around here. That Court of Appeals case had held that there is no right to abortion under the Michigan Constitution. And she said there is. So she basically corrected the loss that she had from when she was a Planned Parenthood attorney. And that's very inappropriate. So you put all those things together, that this is a paradigm case for the Court of Appeals to step in.
On top of the injunction, the ballot effort, not to mention a lawsuit filed by pro-abortion Governor Gretchen Whitmer aimed at erasing that 1931 law, the pro-life movement has also learned the battles against them, not just being waged through the courts, but also through cash, and a lot of it.
They are paying more than we've ever seen paid here in Michigan. At some places, $26 an hour. We've even heard recently $7 a signature. So these aren't grassroots activists that are convicted to get out there and legalize abortion. These are people from all over the country who are being bussed here and paid an outrageous amount of money to gather signatures on something that's not even going to impact them in their state. It's going to impact us here.
Kristen Polo with the Coalition of Michigan Citizens to Support Women and Children says, while they don't have the dollars of the pro-abortion movement, they do have the dedication of tireless volunteers and pro-life leaders. The coalition recently announcing a weekly educational plan detailing the potential far-reaching effects of the pro-abortion ballot initiative.
We on the coalition have found over 15 laws that will be invalidated by this Anything Goes abortion amendment.
That includes possibly removing Michigan's partial birth abortion ban, as well as parental consent laws, the state's Born Alive Infant Protection Act, and affecting licensing and health and safety regulations at abortion facilities, and even more. The Catholic Church here in Michigan, led by Archbishop Alan Vigneron of the Archdiocese of Detroit, along with the Michigan Catholic Conference, admit there are many legal challenges ahead. However, they also say this does not mean an end, only a new beginning to the work that's been ongoing for years. And they are working very closely and are part of the special coalition put together that represents a number of different pro-life groups, including many pregnancy resource centers. And that's why Kristen Polo agrees, despite what seems like a David and Goliath battle ahead, the coalition is and will continue to make life-saving and life-changing differences for women and children.
All of us have come together, Catholics, Protestants, what have you, to work collectively against this Anything Goes abortion amendment.
In Michigan, reporting for EWTN News In Depth, I'm Teresa Tomeo.
Our reporters visited 3 other states in our Life After Roe Debate in the State series, including Tennessee. According to a Pew Research study, Tennessee is the 3rd most religious state, with 73% of adults identifying as highly religious, which may account for its pro-life leaning legislation. Its legislature has been passing some of the country's most pro-life laws, including one that criminalizes abortion pill distribution through the mail, a heartbeat bill banning abortion once a heartbeat is detected, and a trigger law ready to take effect if Roe is overturned.
If Roe v. Wade is overturned in whole or in part, then our law automatically reverts to pre-1973 pre-Roe versus Wade, which would mean all abortions in the state of Tennessee are banned, except for those that would have to be done for the to save the life of the mother, period.
And an amendment to the state constitution made in 2014 solidifies a pro-life stance, reading, "Nothing in this constitution secures or protects a right to abortion or requires the funding of an abortion." We also visited Maryland, which is one of the 4 states that voluntarily funds abortion through taxpayer money. The others are Washington, New York, and Hawaii. Pro-life organizations say restrictions beyond 20 weeks are not always enforced, and parental notification laws for minors can easily be waived. The passage of the Abortion Cares Access Act this year now allows non-doctors, including midwives, to perform abortions. And this year, a state constitutional amendment that would further enshrine access to abortion was proposed but did not pass. And we examined abortion laws in the largest state in the nation, California. It will likely become a sanctuary state for those seeking an abortion. A new law signed by Governor Gavin Newsom already makes abortions cheaper for private insurance holders by eliminating copays and deductibles. And one law allows nurses instead of doctors to perform abortions. During our visit to California, we learned that while poverty is a driving force for abortion in the Golden State, and abortion facilities outnumber pro-life pregnancy centers 2-to-1, pro-life organizations from clinics to Catholic parishes are responding to mothers in need with care and compassion.
I have licensed professionals that do the treatments, that do the counseling. Everybody in the clinic is licensed.
They might need help maybe keeping their job, that might need help continue going to school. And we want to let them know that there is help here, that they can do this, that women are resilient, and we're going to walk with them every step of the way.
A new bill in the California State House proposes decriminalizing infanticide for the first month of a baby's life outside the womb. There's much to keep an eye on in the weeks ahead as the Supreme Court releases the outcome of the Dobbs case. We'll be ready with extensive coverage, and I hope you will be with us for that. Plus, expert analysis from top litigators and advocates when we get the High Court's ruling. We'll be right back.
First of all, who says a disability is a disability? So you get the idea that somehow a body should be a particular shape. But where do you get that from? You don't get it from scripture, you get it from culture.
Understanding how Catholics can help those with disabilities lead a full life in the Church. Our Colin Flynn reports from Rome. Hundreds participate in a pilgrimage to honor a brave Catholic chaplain whose compassion and faith provided comfort to fellow prisoners of war. And young Catholics celebrating with music, dance, and prayer on Pentecost Eve. The Church teaches that human life is sacred in all of its forms, but the world doesn't always see it that way. And while the Church has a good record of supporting those with disabilities, it still has a long way to go. Colin Flynn shares insights from theologians and medical professionals taking part at a conference in Rome in this Catholic Life report.
I think people with disabilities are beginning to recognize that, by virtue of baptism, they are all, as Pope Benedict says, evangelizing builders. They have the same dignity as everyone else. And God, He doesn't call people by a diagnosis or label. No, that's us. What category are we in?
In Rome, Italy, a major conference on disability theology is taking place. This is a relatively new area of theology that explores the ways in which religion has included, or failed to include, people with disabilities and special needs. The event was organized by the Italian Bishops' Conference and brought together some of the world's leading experts in this field. Disability theology.
Yeah.
What is it? Why is it so important?
It's basic. It's going to the depth of what we can think about the Church, questions about God. And what theology is able to say about intellectual disability becomes a kind of a litmus test.
Hans Reinders is a Dutch professor and a leading expert in this area. Because even the Church's teaching on why there are people with disabilities among us has changed drastically over the years, hasn't it? Why people are here with disabilities, why they are born with disabilities, why they develop them,
At least the first 1500 years of the Christian tradition, there was largely, with very few exceptions, a consensus that people with disabilities are among those people who God sent to us in order that we be able to practice charity. The negative way of phrasing that would be in order that we could be better Christians.
That sometimes there is a danger of creating an us, welcoming them. Who is the us and who is them?
Dr. Luca Pedetti teaches theology at Loyola University, Chicago. It's really integrating people with all abilities and disabilities into the kind of the core of the community as one.
Well, creating an inclusive society in which people belong. So it's not just about having an amount of people in a group, right? That's the difference between group and community, is that in a group you can have a bunch of people, they might share certain values or they might join together for a cause. But belonging brings it even further. It's a sense that each person is precious, each person is valued, and each person has a role to play and makes a difference in that community.
Another keynote speaker is Sister Veronica Donatello. She was also responsible for bringing sign language to Vatican News.
Io mi direi una chiesa in cammino.
In the past, in church, I would have said I'm on the road for them, but now it's with them. I'm on the road with them. I think people with disabilities can challenge our rhetoric and our misconceptions.
Misconceptions and preconceived ideas around what it is to be a quote-unquote disabled person is something Reverend John Swinton has been talking about for years. He is a Scottish theologian and has just been appointed as a chaplain to Her Majesty the Queen.
First of all, who says a disability is a disability? So you get the idea that somehow a body should be a particular shape, but where do you get that from? You don't get it from scripture, you get it from culture. So breaking down some of these barriers around who says what disability is, and begin to explore the way the scripture says disability is, the way in which, you know, people with disabilities are used all the time in scripture. Moses, Paul, all these people, that God uses them. I mean, the church has a history of alienating, marginalising people, or insisting that people should be healed or cured from whatever they have done. So maybe we have to rethink bodies. Maybe we have to rethink what it means to be a human being in the light of what Scripture says, in the light of the way that Jesus is, and the light of the diversity of the body of Christ. Because the one thing about the body of Christ is what marks it is not like homogeneity, that we're all the same. It's diversity. It's the diversity of bodies that make up the body of Jesus. I mean, the only way that you'll come to know somebody who lives with, for example, with cerebral palsy is by getting to know them and putting that cerebral palsy to one side and finding Peter or John or Jane or whatever it is. And as soon as you do that, once you get to know people, then a lot of these cultural stigmata and caricatures begin to disappear.
In Rome, Italy, Colm Flynn, EWTN News in Depth.
From Capitol Hill to Nigeria, to Canada to Kansas, the Week in Review is next.
Somewhere out there, there's a mom listening to our testimony, thinking, I can't even imagine their pain, not knowing that our reality will one day be hers, unless we act now.
Gut-wrenching testimony on Capitol Hill as relatives of recent mass shooting victims plead for something to be done to stop the bloodshed.
They're wanting to walk almost in his footsteps and experience, what he went through to learn about this man.
And a snapshot from a pilgrimage honoring a military chaplain who lost his life at war. EWTN News In Depth is coming right back. Emotional family testimony about the mass shootings in Uvalde, Texas and Buffalo, New York tops the Week in Review. Loved ones of those killed in the elementary school and grocery store massacres were on Capitol Hill this week, pleading with lawmakers to take action against gun violence.
Thank you.
In 2 days of hearings before the House Oversight and Reform Committee, their testimony highlighted the human toll of America's gun violence. Among those who spoke, an 11-year-old girl who survived the attack inside her Texas classroom. She described how the gunman first turned the gun on her teacher and then started shooting the students.
He shot some of my classmates and the whiteboard. When I went to the backpacks, he shot my friend that was next to me, and I thought he was going to come back to the room, so I grabbed the blood and I put it all over me. And
what did you do then when you put the blood on yourself?
Just stay quiet, and then I got my teacher's phone and called 911.
And what did you tell 911?
I told her that we need help.
Hours after this testimony ended, the House passed some of the most aggressive gun control measures in years, raising the minimum age to purchase semi-automatic rifles to 21 and banning high-capacity ammunition magazines. However, the measures will not pass the Senate. A small bipartisan group of senators is exploring much more modest changes to federal gun laws. In response to the recent mass shootings, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops has sent a letter to Congress urging gun reform, including a total ban on assault weapons, limitations on civilian access to high-capacity weapons and ammunition magazines, and universal background checks for all gun purchases. The bishops also wrote support for proposals to, quote, set a more appropriate minimum age for gun ownership. Dozens of families are in mourning after a massacre at a Catholic church in Nigeria on Pentecost Sunday. A group of gunmen stormed the church and detonated explosives at St. Francis Church, killing at least 50 people and injuring dozens more, including women and children. Police there have launched a full-scale investigation and say that some of the gunmen disguised themselves as congregants. The suspects remain at large. No group has claimed responsibility. We spoke with Bishop Wilfred Anagbe of Makurdi in Nigeria about these recent attacks, and he says Christians are often targeted.
That has actually been going on over the years in Nigeria. This is not the first time that it took place, but though this was on a very big magnitude, that over 50 persons were killed, and on a very special Sunday, Pentecost Sunday, the birthday of the church. It took place in my diocese in 2018, April 24th, very early in the morning at a morning mass where 2 priests were gunned down and 17 worshippers. That's about 4 years ago. And so these attacks are targeted at the Christian communities and the indigenous people of these areas.
We will be praying for the healing of the injured and the heartbreak of the families who have lost their loved ones. Olympic gymnasts are seeking $1 billion from the FBI over what they called a mishandled investigation into convicted sex offender Dr. Larry Nassar. Simone Biles, Ali Reisman, and Michaela Maroney are among dozens who say the FBI failed to stop the sports doctor when the agency first received allegations of sexual assault in 2015, leaving him free to hurt other women and girls. Nassar wasn't arrested until the fall of 2016 during an investigation by police at Michigan State University, where he was a doctor. He pleaded guilty in 2017 and is serving a 60-year sentence on sexual assault and child pornography charges. Medically assisted suicide, or assistance in dying, is already legal in Canada, but now lawmakers there are taking it a step further with the consideration of a euthanasia bill that would allow patients to order themselves killed without final consent if they become mentally incapacitated. The person would have to be diagnosed with a serious incurable illness, disease, or disability and make a written declaration to waive the requirement for final consent. It must be witnessed by 2 people, and the person must be suffering from the conditions listed in the declaration for the steps in assisted dying to take place. A few countries where euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide is legal include Spain, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. Some 27,000 U.S. service members sought religious exemptions from the mandatory COVID vaccine, but a new COVID vaccine could be an option for military service members who refuse to get vaccinated for religious reasons. The Novavax vaccine was developed without using any fetal-derived cell lines or tissue. The Food and Drug Administration is considering giving it emergency use authorization. The drug is already used in Europe and other regions. A pilgrimage this past week in honor of an American military chaplain who lost his life during the Korean War. Through rain, sun, and wind, hundreds of people turned out for the grueling walk in Kansas to follow in the footsteps of Father Emil Capon, who died in a North Korean prison camp after an 87-mile march of his own. The story from reporter Alan Holdren.
In the Diocese of Wichita, Kansas, annually for the last 14 years, a special pilgrimage has been made. From the busy aero-industrial metropolis of Wichita, 60 miles on foot, to St. John Nepomucene Church in the tiny town of Pilsen, population 65. The 4-day Father Capon pilgrimage remembers a heroic Korean War chaplain from Pilsen who posthumously received the Army's Medal of Honor. And this year's edition was extraordinary.
Every day we're consistently starting with about 300 people, which is our biggest year, bar none. And I think that's kind of attributed to, the fact that we found him and he's home.
Father Emil Capon served in both World War II and the Korean War as an Army chaplain. He died in a prisoner of war camp on May the 23rd, 1951. Until March of 2021, a full 70 years later, Father Capen's remains were unidentified, along with those of so many other unknown soldiers, in the National Cemetery of the Pacific in Honolulu, Hawaii. As soon as his bones were identified, plans were made to bring him back to his home state of Kansas. His funeral was celebrated on September the 29th, 2021, and that very day, his remains were finally placed in a tomb with his name on it in Wichita's Immaculate Conception Cathedral. Father Eric Weldon and some friends created the Father Capen pilgrimage together in 2009.
I always think about how many miles he walked to that prisoner of war camp. And I thought to myself about 14 years ago, what if I just do something for 3 days? And he did it for 3 weeks or longer, you know? And he did it in harsh conditions, under threat of death, with no food and bitter cold. Surely we can do something here in Kansas to commemorate him and who he is.
Today, people of all ages from all over turn out, and for many, once they come once, they keep coming back.
I have not done this pilgrimage before. It's my first time.
This is my 7th year of doing it. Of course, the last 2 years I haven't come because of the COVID.
I've done this pilgrimage 8 times now.
And we signed up for this a couple of years ago. We wanted to do it. We couldn't because of COVID, and this year was an opportunity to do it, so we came.
We've been going at this for a couple years now, but it's just a great experience, and you have to come. You just have to.
And conversations are just in the beauty of nature. You start receiving things from the Lord, and He just showers graces on you in the midst of all the difficulty.
It's not a cakewalk, but it is more spiritually fulfilling than anything else I've ever been a part of.
To know that everyone else is hurting just as much as you are, and the pain that Father Capen went through was worse than that. It's a humbling experience.
You don't have it so bad after all, when you realize what people like that actually had to go through.
It's growing every year. Father Capen is becoming more well-known throughout the country and the world.
The organizers say that this walk leads pilgrims in the footsteps of a man on the path to sainthood, in order to discover their own unique paths to sainthood. As they walk this path in Father Capen's memory and honor, one thing is for sure, they're seeking the holiness they see in his example. Alan Holdren for EWTN News In Depth.
The Diocese of Wichita is promoting Father Capen's cause for canonization and recently hired a new postulator in Rome who is also advocating for the canonization of Blessed Carlo Acutis and another American military chaplain, Vincent Capodanno. Up next are images of the week from Croatia and Poland. We'll be right back. This past weekend, Christians around the globe celebrated Pentecost Sunday, a day we commemorate the beginning of our church and implore the Holy Spirit to reignite our faith. 2 events in Europe, one in Croatia and one in Poland, drew tens of thousands of people to honor this special feast day. We bring you to these gatherings in our images of the week. First to Zagreb, Croatia, where a Christian concert drew 50,000 people. In a jam-packed stadium, the faithful began the festivities with a rosary and Divine Mercy Chaplet and continued on past midnight with singing, dancing, prayer, and confession. The concert ended at 1 a.m., allowing attendants to ring in the church's birthday with friends. And in Warsaw, Poland, 22,000 young Catholics gathered to pray for peace in Ukraine and the world. Like their brothers and sisters in Croatia, these Polish Catholics celebrated the Feast of Pentecost with song and dance, as well as Mass, confession, and adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. The fish-shaped edifice you see here is the centerpiece of the festival, the Gate of the Third Millennium. The attendants passed through the gate in a large procession, signifying their continued commitment to follow Christ. And that does it for this edition of EWTN News In Depth. In the weeks ahead, we'll be monitoring and reporting on developments from the Supreme Court as we await several court rulings of interest to the faithful. Join us for comprehensive coverage. I'm Montse Alvarado. We'll see you again, same time next week.